How would you phrase, like, why did we choose the Nika winner?
I guess the reason was that it, when we watched it, and I actually had it in my group, you know, I had to present it, and I didn't say very much. I just said, this is this, and just watch it. It's just, you know, kind of, you get goosebumps. Not because it's like mind-blowing, but because of it's just very smart in how it combines image, sound, and
data visualization.
Data visualization in a very different way than most data visualization stuff we saw.
And this extra layer of storytelling.
And extra layer of storytelling, and also tension and contradiction, because you see texts about one thing and you see a thing another thing, and you're left as a viewer. It's not an easy solution, just like the theme, which is on climate change. But it's just, I don't know, it's just a strong work. And it's also very unusual how it visualizes data, because it visualizes it, you know, as like a 3D model. It's not it's not visualizing it in terms of like graphs and all of that. There's that as well, but it's just a strong piece from what we saw, you know. And I mean, it was there. And of course, like this morning we came in, it was like, oh God, we have all these, what's gonna be the top works, you know? And we went through in a very, I think, a very, careful process, and people voted, and it just seemed to be, okay, these are the works that have the most votes. And then we said, why? Why is that? And we really, I mean, we didn't really know until right the moment before lunch.
Looking at the patterns, though, based on the votes, it was quite obvious that this is going to be the winner.
Yeah.
Right? Like, by looking at it, there was not really questions. It was more like, who's going to be like the two other men?
The orders of distinction. That was the thing. And then we're kind of switching things out a little bit. And but I think all those three projects, one addresses alternative futures, you know, from a cultural point of view. One addresses issues of data surveillance, but looking back at the history of perception and media practices, and one deals with data visualization or scientific visualization in a way that is inspired by deep research in climate denial. So the three are actually three of the most relevant topics of our time. And I think that, at least in my back of my head, as I saw those coming together, I thought, yeah, these are the three wicked problems of the time. And I think that's important. We kept saying, this is a statement, you know, this is a statement that we're making as a jury, not just about tools, but I mean, we had the really interesting discussion about generative AI, because we saw so many works with using generative AI, but very few of them were critical, like about the fact that you're using stolen images.
Yeah,
you know,
but you definitely feel enthusiasm around it. But I think that people are skipping through the ethical consideration of using these tools, using the AI tools available.
Yeah, and also we kept saying, the jury in 2 years will have even more problems, because they have to look at endless videos made in Sora, and you know, it's not gonna, it's gonna accelerate, you know. So I think it's also maybe a statement that the winning project is actually not so complex technologically, and it doesn't use any AI.
It still has the strongest effect.
Has a strong
on
effect.
all of us. Yeah. The other thing I kind of forgot to mention, it was really kind of promising to see so many emerging artists using now real-time game engines to tell their stories, because now I think I've seen a trend that we've seen people from the underrepresented communities telling their stories, and that's really great to see.
And it's also not just, let's say, gender or cultural underrepresentation, it's also age. I mean, the fact that you have young people, because these are people, these are the future, and so you want to put them on the stage. You want to give them exposure, and I think that's part of our role as teachers, as more mature artists, to enable this for the next generation.
Well said.
I think there was a lot of many layers of things that in that work. So it's quite complex, but execution was beautifully done in a very simple way that the people can understand. Going back to the point of like judging, this year it was difficult for us as after COVID, we don't have much chance to travel to outside your own country or your cities to explore the new installations or new work. So it's not, like you have to also imagine, especially I'm from far, so I had to really imagine, and yeah. So looking at the work, but I could get the point of the theme and subjectivities, and I was very, very impressed by the amount of the thought, research, and that has been put to the work. So
yeah, it was the first work we discussed, and it was the work that we kept coming back to discuss. It kept us in conversation the whole time because it had so many entry points, right?
Yes.
Like from thinking about spirituality and technology to AI, right, and like systems of chatbots to like the actual installation, right? Like the intention of design, and the gaming qualities and the very special collaboration with local artisans, and there was just so much to discuss. So we kept talking about it, and we're like, I think
it kept coming back and back, and then that's the one. Yeah, we were quite agreed and happy, and the last day was. Yeah.
So in this project, the artist builds a loom where the two end pieces of the weaver is replaced by screens. And it's on this screen that you see a kind of mythical deity that you're able to chat with.
Yep.
So you're brought into a kind of spiritual realm. And this deity helps kind of bridge a gap between histories of computing and histories of weaving. And so you're able to kind of get a clear understanding of how these two disciplines are actually very connected in the history of technology.
Yep.
And if you act inappropriately, the deity will boot you out of the game. So it's also, it kind of asks you to come with a kind of behavior of respect.
Yeah. And play and learn aspect too. So it's not like very clear like the game like, but you realize that like how you participate to the discourse and conversation of the historical background of like the culture of the artist and also the history of computations. And it's a hand loom, so it's actually way beyond back to history of Jakarta, which is the first computer we passed, but it's hand. So it's been with us. We still have that technique and craft today. So it's the technology that is very old and still new. And that was the manifesto that very appealing for us to look at. And also, the installation was very beautifully done. Lot of things to look at.
Yeah. The installation is kind of dressed up with artifacts of the deity, and then also just beautiful textiles that were made in collaboration with Senegalese artisans and weavers. It really just was, fun to look at. It was beautiful.
Yeah. And technically, like, it's not like a high tech there kind of, but it's actually a lot of effort but beautifully crafted and intuitive also. So, but not too obvious until you play and see. And there's also some interesting part, like a hair comb it was placed and with the message engraved. So again, that is another kind of the questioning that the posed question from artists that what is this means or what is all about. And I think that's Yeah, many layers.
Also ich glaube, es war uns wichtig, ein Projekt auszuwählen, das diese politische Bandbreite, also dieses politische Interesse der Einreichungen auch irgendwie widerspiegelt, würde ich sagen.
Das war auf jeden Fall ein großer Beweggrund. Und es ist eigentlich ein total kurzes Projekt, würde ich jetzt einmal sagen, wenn man es halt quasi anklickt, die Animation, die 10 Sekunden lang ist. Und ja, jetzt würde man wahrscheinlich sagen, 10 Sekunden, da kriegt man gar nichts mit in der kurzen Zeit, aber man hat da bei uns im Juryraum gemerkt, dass diese 10 Sekunden sie angefühlt haben wie, ich weiß nicht, Jahrzehnte in der Tragweite, die da vermittelt worden sind. Es geht eben in der Animation darum, man sieht eine Schwimmweste und in dieser Schwimmweste sind kleine Schlauchboote oder wie Luftballone drinnen, die quasi pulsieren und metaphorisch quasi für die Fluchtbewegungen nach Europa oder prinzipiell für Fluchtbewegungen stehen. Und nur durch den Sound in dieser Animation wird die Schrecklichkeit, die flüchtende Personen erleben auf dem Weg, dargestellt und die totale Emotionalität hervorruft, ohne dass Personen und tragische Schicksale eigentlich ins Zentrum gerückt werden. Also der Sound im Hintergrund, der vom Künstler verwendet, ist so stark einfach.
Ja, also es war faszinierend, wie eine so kurze, prägnante Animation wirklich so viel vermitteln konnte in so kurzer Zeit und auch ausgekommen ist ohne dramatisierte Bilder.
Es war nicht voyeuristisch, sondern
genau.
Es hat eben die Tragik in diesen 10 Sekunden total auf den Punkt gebracht. Und was wir auch hervorheben wollten, ist, dass schon, dass sich der Künstler auch dem wieder angenommen hat, weil man schon, der Diskurs hat sich ja seit 2015 total verschoben. Und man muss halt schon sagen, es ist unter Anführungszeichen, und bitte nicht falsch verstehen, aber nicht im Trend, und trotzdem hat er sich die Problematik hergenommen, weil eben der Diskurs verschiebt sich ja ganz stark nach rechts, also politisch genauso wie eben gesellschaftspolitisch. Und in der jetzigen Zeit, auch wenn Österreich vor wichtigen Wahlen steht im Herbst 2024, ist es, glaube ich, schon sehr stark auch von unserer Seite als Jurorinnen und von der Ars Electronica zu sagen, wir stellen uns gegen den Rechtsruck und wir unterstützen solche Projekte umso mehr. Also ich finde, es ist wichtig, Stellung zu beziehen mittlerweile.
Ich finde es auch extrem mutig, von ihm Stellung zu beziehen, vom Künstler an sich und eben dieses Thema, für das er jetzt vielleicht nicht so viel Feedback sich erwarten konnte, das trotzdem aufzugreifen, weil er es für sich selbst einfach wichtig empfunden hat. Und also irgendwie die Menschen, die betroffen sind, einfach zu vermenschlichen. Also ich finde es wahnsinnig spannend, wie es durch eine digitale Animation trotzdem die Menschen vermenschlicht und greifbarer macht, das Leid irgendwie. Nur durch das Sounddesign und die bildliche Sprache.
Und ich glaube, es lässt auch so für Diskussion und Nachdenken irgendwie übrig. Oder das, wenn man eben nach den 10 Sekunden, wenn es vorbei ist, dann haben wir zum Beispiel auch viel über Hoffnung diskutiert oder gesprochen. So eben, gibt es Hoffnung in der Flucht? Wo endet die Hoffnung? Ist die irgendwie nur am Anfang da? Oder wo sind die Werte der europäischen Demokratien geblieben? Also es ist, es ist in seiner Einfachheit, aber so total komplex. Und ja, deswegen haben wir uns dafür entschieden.